Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Vocal Arts, wherever you are watching or listening from. I am here with the great David Michael Frank. David, please tell the people who you are and a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm a singer. I'm an artist. I've been doing I guess I started YouTube in 2011 and it's been my full-time gig. I've been in lots of bands and I'm a vocal nerd. So I'm excited to nerd out with you about it. I even go down to like the speech pathology and like I have
Ooh,
photos and videos on my phone of my vocal cords all the way back to 2011. So yeah, I'm excited to chat singing and all the stuff with you.
fantastic. Wow. You started YouTube in 2011.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
an OG creator. What did your YouTube channel kind of look like? What was the content structure when you first started?
Well, are you in school?
Right now?
Yeah.
No, no, I finished. I got all my degrees a while back.
Cool. Cool, cool. Well, yeah, it sounded like you were studying and preparing for something. You said opera.
Oh,
I
yeah, world premiere opera for Opera Las Vegas. So,
That's awesome.
fully
Congrats.
fully professional opera at this point.
That's cool. Yeah, I guess now I'm sort of a little bit more in like I guess you could say sort of like the rock world, but I went to University of Oregon where I studied vocal performance as a tenor in the music school, but I was also in the business school entrepreneurial focused as well. So I was going back and forth between the two, hiring accompanists to play piano for me, singing in Italian, and then going and doing music or regular business, not even music business, regular business reports and stuff.
Wow, so you were in school in 2011 and that's when you started the YouTube channel?
Yeah. So during that time, I was seeing a lot of the people like leading up to that time. I was seeing a lot of people doing covers, and they were playing multiple instruments, and sort of taking over the spotlight of music and YouTube. There's a lot of incredible people at the time: Tyler Ward, Kurt Hugo Schneider, Alex Goot. And these were people that would eventually become my friends, but I was seeing them online and I was going, I could do that. And I was sort of scared to dive in. And I wasn't great. I had been recording my whole life, so I was sort of an audio engineer nerd at that point, and guitar is my main instrument. And so I started making shitty videos, but trying my best. And I wasn't a great singer, and I was learning the production. And I also you could see sort of the beginning of my like vocal push where it was like I covered like Adele and I like wouldn't do it in lower key. And even I remember people in town being like, "You should have dropped the key. You don't sound good." And I was like, "I know." Um, and so yeah, I was really just sort of diving in and studying that, playing multiple instruments, and then I sort of got discovered and brought out to LA and put into a boy band. Which showed me a lot of dark side of the industry. So yeah, it's been like a long journey. I'm happy to share it if you want. But I saw a lot of the good stuff and the bad stuff, and then was an independent artist. And I only switched to my name after a series of bands about a year and a half ago. So now I'm a new artist under my name.
Huh.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about. First of
Yeah,
all, it's wild that you were doing business and vocal performance in undergrad because I was a music production major, music
cool.
under the music industry umbrella, but still studying opera, still performing in the operas. And weirdly, that has kind of continued. I've had kind of one foot in the music production since I started loving electronic music when I went to school in Miami 12 years ago until now to where it's, doing the YouTube thing, producing music, doing the YouTube channel, the podcast, but also still performing professionally as an opera singer. So
That's awesome.
managed to keep those going. But when you were studying vocal performance, were you studying as a tenor or countertenor, first of all?
Tenor. I don't think I'm a countertenor. Tenor.
Okay. Okay. Tenor. Do you remember any of the repertoire you sung back then or any roles that you did if you performed in operas?
Yeah, I mean, I probably forgot how to properly pronounce things, but there was one that the first one that came to my mind was like "O del mio dolce ardor." Oh,
Oh,
del mio
yeah.
dolce ardor, bramato jetto.
One of the
Yeah,
24 Italians, right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
little
So,
yellow book.
yeah, oh, yeah, I actually can see it. Um, Yeah, so and that was cool, and I learned a lot about sort of pure tone, and I was listening to a lot of Muse at that time, and he clearly has some classical vocal training, Matt Bellamy, um, but I, even as pure as I was, sometimes they would be like, "Can you do it a hair less rock?" And I was like, "All right, cool." But I was soaking it all up. I was watching all the Pavarotti. I was like watching all the
Hmm.
tenors and um, just soaking it up. But I didn't realize how much that would play into sort of just what I was going to eventually be doing, at least now. And so how the technique is like so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you keep studying formally after your undergrad in any kind of classical training, or has it mostly been self-taught since then?
Um, I I usually I did of course a lot of self-taught and being in bands, but I would work with different vocal teachers. So I remember in LA, I auditioned a bunch of like I like they'll give you like a free lesson. I like probably had like five different teachers and I couldn't find who I wanted. And I worked with a lot of different people. I worked with baritones, I worked with women, and eventually I remember hitting a plateau where I couldn't sort of get over where I was as a tenor, and I was tiring myself out, and I would have vocal problems from time to time, and I've had to actually sort of heal through like a few vocal problems in my life. Um, and I found a guy who lived like an hour and a half away from LA. His name's Thomas Appel, and he had sort of the tenor, and I hadn't worked with a tenor yet, and he could do it. And he worked
Mm.
with a lot of other like bands and artists and Idol and all the people like that. And so I tested him out, and he actually did unlock like another part of my voice. At least like the idea or like the understanding of it and like what I would need to do to get there. And then it never really escalated until TikTok was when I sort of put it all together.
Hmm. So what was the plateau you were facing, and what did that teacher kind of help you unlock that you were able to explore later?
Well, for me, singing was always just about like serving the song, and I was always in bands, and it's really hard on the road touring, like weather, travels, talking, fried food, like all of the things really like affect you. So I would tour, and I can't even think of like a tour that I like was comfortable, where like I'm not having up against sort of a vocal. It's so hard. Like the talking kills you. If you go out to like a bar or something, you're trying to talk to people, you're just yelling without like really realizing. Um, so I do think it developed through vocal problems that I was working through. And also, I had an ENT slash doctor that I started seeing in 2011 that I still am very close with. She's literally the best in the industry, and she works with like everyone. I met Halsey once, and we like bonded over how we have the same vocal doctor.
Amazing.
And yeah, she truly is the best. So she's saved my ass a million times, and she's honestly sort of a therapist or by it. But I think when I was there, I was tiring out. I was seeing certain singers sort of getting over that tenor high C and being able to be comfortable. And then at the same time, I was sort of struggling with that like G sharp, like F sharp to G sharp A kind of
Second passaggio.
I yeah, passaggio, yeah. I was sort of struggling with that. And I think that that's sort of always like a not a weakness point, but it did become something to focus on. But I think that's going to always be something that
It is for
is,
everyone who gets really advanced in singing. The two passaggi are always the hardest parts to navigate for sure.
yeah. I don't know where if there's a higher one, I don't know where exactly where that is. Um,
Above
but
the second one, it turns into going like fully into your head voice or falsetto. But for men, the first two is purely like a resonance shift. So
yeah,
you're staying in your chest voice, so when you get above the F sharp, but the resonance has to shift, and figuring out how to navigate based on the shape of your mouth and where your tongue is placed, and just like figuring out how to get those frequencies to pop out right in those few little notes, really
yeah,
tough. And changes based on the vowel, of course.
yeah, totally. Yeah, which that takes you back to your like studying vocal performance in school because those pure vowels and even that vowel modification became so important that
Mhm.
now I don't even think about it when I'm singing an A or like vowel or something sort of ugly in like English. I'll modify it like just without, it's just sort of easier now.
Yeah. And you kind of, I'm guessing, have built in how to modify based on where you are in your range, right? So if you're singing an open vowel towards the bottom, it's going to be different than how you modify it if you're going, in your upper passaggio.
Yeah, I'm still sort of like working out the kinks on sort of like the shortcut, like the easier way to do it, but
Hmm.
because I really do have chest connection up into soprano high C. I like really don't, but I can, and I'm like flexing it pretty fucking hard. Like I'm
Yeah.
really like, there's a lot there. And that just becomes like, that's a lot of what I had sort of built my own like working routine of what I was practicing and how I was like working it in. Um, but now I'm sort of like shifting a little and like laying back on like the falsetto and then sort of flexing in.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound as cool. Um, but there is sort of like a magic point. And then if you're live, like that doesn't matter at all. Like you can just throw out like A is above tenor IC and everybody loves it, but like it's super easy. Even if you're having vocal like tiredness problems, like that's still there. It's just really like the A, B area that you struggle on more below that. Um,
Yeah. So you
yeah.
find you're able to carry some of the chesty weightiness all the way up to the top of your usable range, essentially.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if you've ever driven a stick shift, but the way that I
I
sort
have.
of think about it, yeah, the way I think about it is you've got your gas and you've got your clutch, and um, I would say one of them would be sort of my chest. The way I think about that, the chest resonance, and one would be sort of your falsetto is also the other way I think about it. And I know there's a lot of different like M1, M2, and like there's a lot of ways other people think about it,
Mhm.
mixed voice, whatever. But if there is some version of mix, it's that balance of you're trying to do falsetto, full voice, gas on the balancing that. And yeah, I can go full falsetto and I can mix in a pretty good amount of that chest right into it and bring it back up. And that's like a lot of the exercises that I built for myself. Um,
And all the
yeah,
way up, you said this like soprano high C.
yeah, yeah,
That's remarkably high to
yeah.
bring
It is.
in to
Yeah,
bring any kind of, I mean, to even phone it up there is generally way above what guys can do, but to also bring some weightiness, that's awesome, man. And I mean,
yeah.
I've heard you do it in your videos. I mean, it is a powerful sound. It's a thick sound up there, far more than other guys can do for sure.
It's so fucking loud that like sorry if I'm cursing, but
It's okay.
like when I'm on tour, for example, or even like recording, like the dynamic difference is so much that like even if I'm setting my like wireless mic to really catch that peak, like now it's actually too low. And same with my like when I'm recording, like and I don't want to go adjust preamp levels like while I'm recording. So, I sing into an 1176 and like if audio, compressor. I don't know how much you know about it, but you said you
Yeah.
study.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
sing into an 1176 and like I will be like tapping the chorus with like whatever 3 decibels when I'm like belting. And then like if I go into my screamy stuff, I just pin it down to like 20 decibels and like it sounds good. Like it's not a problem. But like and now live I do have an outboard compressor that comes right after my wireless mic that is like my safety and it does make it much more reasonable for sound people.
Well,
Um
loud singing is something I can appreciate and relate to. It's the main thing one does as an opera singer is just hollering over an orchestra without a
yeah.
microphone.
And one of the things that I sort of took from that like idea, um, because you're doing that, and when I was in school, it was sort of the same idea. You're sort of filling the room, and you can actually work off the acoustics of the room.
Mhm.
Um, this last tour, actually, like a few tours, it started from like a technical difficulty issue, but um, I would I would tell the sound guy to shut off the sound, and I'd take an acoustic guitar and tell everybody to shut up, and they do. And then it's just you and an acoustic guitar, and even if there's a ton of people, like everybody can hear you, like and you
Yeah,
just sort of fill whatever room you're in. It makes it really intimate, really cool. So I've been sort of tapping into that old idea
that's
lately.
during a performance. You'll do that.
Yeah, during like a full band rock show, I'll say, "Hey, pause, shut off, mute the PA," and I'll take an acoustic guitar and just do whatever song I'm feeling that day. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah,
There aren't a ton of artists who can do that, I would say. I mean, a lot of more commercial artists do become exceptional at mic technique and really use and lean into the amplification. So that's really cool that you do that and can, I mean, what kind of spaces are you singing in also is something I'm curious about.
Clubs,
Yeah.
not necessarily like theaters usually, but yeah, whatever 100 to 300 cap
Okay.
clubs.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome. Do you
yeah,
find that you, I mean, are actively thinking about the classical technique kind of foundation that you started in undergrad when you're singing?
yeah. And I can also think about like when I was comping my vocals, like throughout some of my old bands, I would lean towards the pure vowels, and my bandmates would listen to the other comps and be like, "Why aren't you choosing this one?" I was like, it's like too gritty or like too like whatever. It's not as like pure as it could be. The tone's not as rich. Um, and since then, I have shifted a little bit more because the emotionality often does come through the sort of the imperfect technique,
Hmm.
the squeaks or the like sighs at the end of a word, or the grit in a vocal. And also, I did a tour with a screamer, Lauren Babick, and I would be warming up my voice like all the time, and super nerdy and worried about my voice, and um, how can other singers not be around me like warming up all the time and not be like, oh shit, I need to warm up too because David's warming up all day. And so like I would see her warming up, and it's very different with screaming, and also same with where she would lose or have vocal problems. It was interesting to be have her be like, oh, like I'm losing my low screams, or I'm losing my growls, or I'm losing my highs, or whatever it is that screamers have that's different. So I've always been fascinated with it. um and as my technique is getting better and able to sing higher and fuller, I'm finding the ability to sort of bring in that like Freddie Mercury meets Chester Bennington kind of like
Mm,
fry in a way that I think is healthy. Um, and it feels relaxed. And of course I watch a lot of people singing talking about it, but I can't like scream, but I can add grit to my
yeah.
notes.
Well, that's awesome, and it gives your performance so much versatility. If you can go from a pure Italian ah vowel, and you know what that is, and you can shift into an intentionally grittier, huskier, breathier tone. That
Yeah.
adds so much. And you're so right. I mean, I find that like pure classical singing, I've tested this recently, kind of like singing opera in a studio setting in like a vocal booth is just not where it's meant to be done.
Hmm.
And you can't tell how big and loud the sound is when you're recording into a mic because of gain reduction and where you're setting the levels and all these things. And so that the amazing thing about a big loud, pure sound doesn't come through in the studio, but like a fry scream or like a really airy sound can sound huge. And even though, IRL, it's not the loudest sound, but it has that intensity because of all the noise and the air and stuff. And it's just interesting how sounds work in an acoustic setting versus a studio setting, versus maybe an amplified setting, and so on. So, when did you actually start, and how have you approached learning how to put grit in the sound? It's something I've always wanted to be able to do, but since I'm so heavily trained in the way of singing opera, I can sing pop now, like I do with the bass gang, and I do my own stuff, but
Hmm.
I have not gotten into singing grit, and I would love to introduce that into my kind of toolkit.
Yeah, yeah, I do think that, yeah, definitely the more stuff you can add to your toolkit. Um, yeah, I've learned a lot from sort of emulating tone of people. So like if I had to think about some of the singers that transformed me, it would be like early days, you've got I already mentioned Muse, Matt Bellamy, and then like Incubus, Brandon Boyd. These are all tenors. And then sort of tapped into sort of the Radiohead Tom York thing, which like really strengthened my falsetto. And all of these things, yes, they're part of the toolkit, but then once you start to like do what I'm doing now, like that falsetto, whatever I did with my Radiohead stoner era, like really affected my ability to do what I need to now. So I'd say it sort of opened up for me with copying some of the like it really was all TikTok because I started doing it daily. And I was just either doing songs that I wanted that always inspired me that I never tried. Like there was like I never really was into Sleeping with Sirens, but there was always like this one part of like a Pierce the Veil Sleeping with Sirens kind of collab on a song called King for a Day. And Kellen Quinn is the singer. And I was always jealous of his range. He's definitely, I forget what kind of countertenor, a Leggero tenor, I think I looked up.
Leggero tenor. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I was always jealous. Like, how does he sing like that? And there was a part in that one song. And so like I did that on TikTok. And when you do it every day, and I do my videos live, which that means that like the take that you see, it might look like I haven't been doing 30 takes because I'm usually pretty like energetic, but like I've done 30 takes and I keep screwing up little things or the lyrics or whatever. And then every performance has an element of improvisation to it. And then it's truly 105% of what I can do at that day I recorded it. Like, I unfortunately wish I could write or sing like simple songs that like don't fucking push my range or whatever, but I always like hit 100%. So all of my TikToks were that. And so my early development with TikTok became a study of the best singers that inspired me, singers that I was going, oh, I can never do that. And that's how you get your like Celine Dion covers out of me or your Whitney Houston, because I was like, okay, these are the greats. So I do think when you get some of the like clearly the Kellen Quinn Sleeping with Sirens sort of opens up something in my higher range, like with Grit. But then even when you go Freddie Mercury, that's where you start to go, oh, okay, so I can sing it with that same grit, down lower like this. So yeah, my advice to you is do the things that you can't do. Which much like working out, what do you do when you work out? Like you lift weights and you max out, right? That's how
Yeah.
you build your, weight training. And so by constantly sort of pushing at my limits by copying people who are better than me. And it means rest days and it means like of course you can hurt yourself. And I like I said, I've had vocal injuries, but I'm always leaning back on good technique and listening to my body and understanding where something would be tight. And I mean, I know how to do the proper I forget what it's called, the massage.
The range of
Um,
massage and stuff like that.
yeah, and I actually, well, we'll get there, but yeah, I'd say definitely copying that, the voices that inspire you that are doing that kind of screaming stuff that you think you've got maybe a similar range to,
Hmm.
like me with Brandon Boyd from Incubus, um, and then from there, then it's sort of like implementing those tools. Yeah.
Cool. I'd say it seems less common as like a true bass voice. Like when I think someone who's like a real bass doing grit, I think of like Jonathan Young, who
Sure.
I don't know if you know Jonathan Young, but
Yeah, yeah. I've
there
done
aren't
some
a,
collabs with him. Yeah.
oh man, I love Jonathan. And an
Yeah.
amazing voice and like truly a low natural bass voice who has learned how to do all the grit and of course extend his range upwards as well. Um, I want to wind it back. So you started on YouTube in 2011. What brought you into the social media sphere, the TikTok sphere? And about
Um,
what time was that?
well, so I had been, social media has changed over the years in the music industry, specifically like monetization, of course, has changed as well. 100,000 iTunes was $100,000 and 100,000 Spotify is $300. And I've had to navigate that, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I've had certain things that sort of open my eyes to the importance of being quick to respond to trends, and also shifting your business over the years. So like I have friends who I would produce often that were millions of subscribers on YouTube, which was the goal back then, and probably making crazy money on iTunes. But
Hmm.
they were so stuck in a certain mindset that they weren't able to necessarily shift. And unfortunately, it's sort of like the bigger you are, the harder you fall. Like mentally, I've seen a lot of them have like a lot of struggle with it. But when you can't shift or you don't understand how to be self-sufficient when times are like a little bit different or like self-reliant, now you rely on a producer, but now all of a sudden the budget's not there. Um, uh, yeah, so I of course was doing YouTube and doing covers, and back then the way it would work would be a song would come out, and first person to cover it would get sort of the related video views. And this was also at a time when you could get the YouTube homepage. Um, and my first burst of that was I did a cover of Somebody I Used to Know, which was a hard tenor song. And I was like, this vocal's so cool. And I did this cover and I came up with the idea of doing a one shot where like the camera had a walking path and we had people popping in and popping out and then all of a sudden like my friends would like hand me a keyboard and then it would disappear and they'd hand me like a guitar like whatever, right? And it hit the YouTube homepage and I was like, okay, this is really cool. And then like, you know, in bands doing like covers of things, whatever, One Direction drops a song and we would cover it. And then Miley Cyrus, this is sort of funny, but Miley Cyrus put out Wrecking Ball. And I was in a band. We were
Hmm.
working on like an acoustic record at the time. And it was the fastest growing video views on Vivo of all time. And so I was like, all right, we got a thing. You guys go to the hardware store and go get a rope. You guys go get one of those big workout balls. I'm going to start the track. Get a videographer here at like 2 p.m. And we tied up a rope, two horse stables, and a workout ball, and I got naked. And it's still on YouTube. And it went worldwide viral. Billboard, Ryan Seacrest, Perez Hilton. I was even on the homepage of gay.net. I didn't even know that was a site. And our album sales, our iTunes at the time, like popped to on our originals like $8,000 a month on like iTunes. And as like an independent band, I was like, oh shit, okay, cool. There's money here. We can like do the touring stuff we need to do. And so that was sort of an opening. And I remember I did a European tour and I was like, how'd you find out about the band? It was like Wrecking Ball, Wrecking Ball, Wrecking Ball, Wrecking Ball, Wrecking Ball.
Hmm.
So that sort of opened it up. And then when, you know, time goes on, you know, TikTok comes out. Um, and I was still using my old band name at the time. And my now wife encouraged me to use my name when I signed up. And I signed up late because TikTok was for kids and it was like just people
Hmm.
dancing. Um, and then you see sort of the like Sam Riders of the world, right? Sam Hairwolf Rider,
Yeah.
and same thing with where I'm like, I can do that, like I can sing that, like I understand what he's doing. He's like personable. He's like, and his life changed, right? He was like singing in his little studio with his lamp behind him, and so that was probably like one of the first people that sort of inspired me to like dive into it, and then it just became vocal study and it became treating my voice, which was now my limitation, treating my voice like an athlete would treat training for the Olympics. And every single day, there were hours and hours of it. And rest days were intentional. You know, it was a part of, and diet was being watched. And
Hmm.
I was seeing my voice doctor. Um, and yeah, so social media just became this adapting thing that you sort of need to stick with. And actually, I'm in the process because I just did two very weird and unique tours, and I'd be happy to talk about them. But that uh, I got back, and I know I need to modernize everything, my fan communities, my merchandise, my all the support, everything needs to be recalibrated in a way that can be more monetizable and trackable and
Hmm.
advertisable. And so I've been honestly for the last like 3 weeks reworking everything. And I haven't like launched everything yet. I'm even like wearing like a silly like on on
I
Vocal
love
Rest
that.
shirt because I just straight up wanted it for myself because I would always like text to my people on tour. Um, but and I haven't launched the shirt yet, but I have like different things like that. So yeah, social media is necessary for making a living in a time where the music doesn't pay for anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how much has your time towards these various avenues changed since you started really diving into social media? So like, let's say first it was putting a lot of time into YouTube, and I don't know how you divide it up into YouTube and into live shows. How much of that is now focused on finding the trends and really keeping the social media presence booming?
It's been different in each phase of my life. You know, when I was in LA, I was a one-stop shop producer for talent. So let's say you're an artist, singer, songwriter, YouTuber. I was the person that Katy Perry would drop a song. You would text me and be like, "Hey, David, can you make me my cover? Let's do piano, vocal. You know my range, my key." And then I would produce it all out, and then they would come into my studio, and I would shoot their video. I would do everything. I'd edit it. I would do their photography for the album art. I would make that for them, and then
Wow.
I would, if they wanted to spend their own money, I could advertise it. I like learned Facebook ads over the years too. So I was doing that, and I was neglecting my own artistry and development because I could make a buck doing this work that I'm good at, but isn't where my heart is and my passion is. And that was coming after being in bands, where in bands, yes, social media is important. Yes, like covers and whatnot were important. And that's how we got our fans. But we were in album cycles. We were, all right, we're going to do this album. It's going to that's our focus. And then we're going to tour it. And then we're going to come back and get our shit out of storage. And then we'll do another album. And then we'll tour it. Um, I lived in like Orlando. I lived in like Oregon. We were like literally homeless for being in a band. And then, when I got to LA, back to LA, I started to reprioritize myself at the advice of my now wife, who she's a YouTuber and she just does like 30-minute talking videos about like very difficult topics. And she's sort of old school like me and sort of a big dog in the YouTube world. And uh then I did the focus, the TikTok every single day, short form vertical content for a long time. But my heart is in the original music, the people who have my lyrics tattooed on them, the people that say, "Hey, your song changed my life. Your song gave me like the hope at like a very dark time. Your song was healing. Your song." There's just a lot of people that have shared that with me, and the value that Spotify tells me my art is worth is nothing, right? Like
Mm.
you can't buy your groceries with it. Like, so there was this like, off balance thing. So I kept doing what I was doing for a while. We moved to Nashville. We got married. We had a kid. We now have two kids, but we moved to Nashville. And after I switched to my name, uh, I knew, and this was literally January, like or early last year, I knew that I wanted to focus on original music. So all of my TikTok growth, I think I've been at 2.2 million followers almost like since then, right? Like all of my growth was in this like daily content period.
Mm.
And I mean, I've grown on other platforms, but TikTok's been relatively stagnant. I took the time off and I've been only hiding in my hole in the basement and I've been only working on original music. And in the like what year and a half, I have 25 songs that are almost done. And I plan on releasing in a way that's very different than what the industry does, where they say you need to pick a single and you need to put $10,000 behind it and shoot a music video and do this ad
Yeah.
campaign.
Yeah.
Like, nah, like I've thrown enough like bullseyes with the TikTok dartboard to understand that like if the songs are loaded and I'm throwing darts at a dartboard while covering Dream On Monday and then throwing a Tuesday original song, if I can get that song to go, I'll put that song out on Wednesday. And that sort of goes back to covering Miley Cyrus, right? Like how do you take advantage of the people looking at you in that moment. And that also goes down to why I'm rebuilding my website and whatnot, because with pixel access, if somebody liked your Instagram picture a year ago and you can show them an advertisement to make them a part of your community, to hopefully share who I am, because in a 30-second TikTok, I look like a fucking hyper Disney kid. And I'm like a real person. And I get to know people in my fan community and touring. I know thousands of people's like names and they're like
Mm.
families. And so yeah, I've got really bad ADHD, so I just ramble. Um,
No, that's a lot of great information.
yeah,
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. So 18 months ago, you really made the big switch towards following dreams of doing a lot of original music. Have you not released any of the 25 songs yet? Is that all like
I've released five.
five? Okay,
And also maybe you could say one that I like did before I like took my breakaway. but with that one, that was the first one I released under my name. And when I put it out, it hit number two on the iTunes alternative chart and number 38 overall on top 40. And then I did one of those, hey, duet me and write your own verse. And I came up with the idea of flying the winner out to Nashville, and they were going to be a part of my album and record their verse. And nobody knows who the winner is yet, and people have already probably forgot. But that one decently viral. And so yeah, I flew that person out, shot the music video, recorded it. They keep being like, "Hey, when is this album coming out? Are you ever going to release this song?" And I will, of course. But yeah, I've released five and independently. But I haven't given them the time of day that they needed because I also knew that I needed to rebuild my touring. So in this time, I've had a baby. Earlier, I had a son, and in this time away, I've had a baby girl, and I've also done two tours that were not normal. Um, Instead of regular venues where there's no money exchanged beforehand, but the headliner is the only person that gets paid, and then they lowball the supporting acts. Me, I get offered $100 a show to go on tour, even though I'll sell 60, 80 tickets or whatever. I got my wife's permission the first time I came up with this idea to spend like $20,000 on our credit card and rent private rooms, like literal, like uh, a dance studio, basement of a mall in Syracuse, New York, churches on a Tuesday, anywhere that you could throw a quinceanera or a bar mitzvah, you can rent. And so I rented all these places. I bought a sound system. I bought thousands of dollars of stage lighting. I bought extra in-ear monitor stuff so that any of my supporting acts could walk in and they could just have in-ears, and I'd hand them a microphone and run their sound and hire a sound person. And I tested a prototype that changes the game. Even Billboard covered it, which is cool. Changes the game for artists where like literally my biggest expense is paying the salary of my crew because I can get a place for $300, and that's drastically different than a venue that's going to keep $1,500, 2,000, whatever the hell their expenses are. And then they're going to then do 70-30 split. Then I only get 30 or 70% of that. And then they're going to take 20% of my merch. And this is also if I'm the headliner. And then they're going to force ticket prices to be $14.99 so that they can put a $12 fee on the front of it and they can sell more walk-ups. Whereas when I did my tour, I priced it at $30 because this was fucking so much work. 27 cities of like event planning, like
Oh my
plan a wedding, like
God.
try doing it in 27 cities, right? $30 ticket. I think it's worth it. And I brought in supporting acts and I did all of this and I hired a crew and had them on salary, and we were the door guy and we were the ones selling hot dogs and we were the ones running sound, and I got bands to open, and they got paid better than they ever get paid because all I had monetization wise was the stage time that you have. I know it's $150 an hour, whatever, right? I know your stage time cost. I know my sound guy's cost. So 20% of my sound guy, 20% of the tour manager, and your stage time. And then the rest of the ticket money, that's yours. And people were making good money. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm excited
Wow.
about that idea. And I've done that twice. But yes, I have been away from the internet. Literally, like the first thing I like posted back was like this last week, and I did the symphony collab, and that's already done over 16 million on like Instagram and TikTok. So it's nice to know I can still throw a bullseye, but I'm not ready yet to start throwing darts until more songs are finished, mastered.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, we're going to talk more about tour in a second. I have it circled because I'm really interested in the whole tour experience. Just back to TikTok for a second. So it's so interesting. So how do you feel? How is your like artistic fulfillment? You as a person feeling dedicating all this time to original music, um, being off the social media, which a lot of people, a lot of creators find very toxic in how they handle that. What's it been like to really just be diving in, focusing on music and really the stuff that you want to be working on, while also being a little bit more perhaps out of the spotlight of doing the daily TikTok videos and such?
My income has gone down a lot, and that also has to do with the fact that in my focus, um, it's been hard for me to also communicate as much with my like fan communities that like would have been a part of like subscriber only content or behind the scenes stuff. And that's a part of what it's about to shift. But of course, when your income drops in such a tricky mental health like job anyways, that does like hurt. Like that is hard.
Hmm.
Um, and then beyond that, I think you can probably recognize the like the dopamine high of when you're doing well online, which isn't healthy. And I think that TikTok does probably the best job at like Vegasing and gamifying
Yeah.
their platform because the algorithm's so good and it can truly change your life through one video. So everybody's out there trying to write the song of the summer or whatever they want to come up with in their videos. Um, I do recognize that it's a new game and it's a lot more of a even playing field, and I think the labels are realizing that. And um, I think you see some of the bigger artists complaining, which does actually sort of piss me off a little bit. But because they'll be like, I don't, you know, I'm a huge major label artist, and now I got to go like make TikToks. My record label's making me make TikToks. Like in my mind, I'm like, I've been sleeping in a van in the summer with bunk beds made out of wood, and I'm not even a carpenter. And it was 80, like it was like 95 degrees when in Texas as we wake up, and all we have is D battery fans keeping us alive. And you're complaining that you have to make TikToks now. That's fine. Um, but I do recognize that it is a hard when you're putting stuff out, so promoting the music that you care so much about, and then it doesn't get served algorithmically to people. That's hard. Um, and I do think that it doesn't mean that that's not a good piece of content. It means that maybe you posted at the wrong time of day. It means because if you're used to getting a million views and you get something that gets 5,000 views, um, it just didn't get shown. So there's a reason it didn't
Mhm.
get shown, or the Vegas thing that they do is just trying to fuck with you. So you can keep playing that. So yes, it's hard on mental health. Um, I think one of the things, you know, just to be transparent about it is because music is my passion. Like if I had millions of dollars in the bank, I would be literally doing the same thing that I'm doing. Um, is that, you know, my wife and I, we both work from home and you know, we have our kids. We don't have much childcare. We sort of pass them back and forth throughout the day as she's shooting a YouTube video. I'll have both of them. I'm recording vocals. She'll have both of them, whatever it is. And I sort of get in trouble also with the ADHD is that I'll come upstairs and I'm talking about music. And she's like, "Hey, can you like live? Like, can you put your work away?" I'm like, "It's not work. I can't call it work. I fucking love it." Like, um, and yeah, that gets me in trouble, and that's sort of hard on mental health and relationships. So then I have to sort of say, "No, I'm not going to look at how something does," and I have been. I've been like not looking at it, and yeah, it's a really tricky thing. And I know
Mhm.
that, like I mentioned, the YouTubers who their mental health from being big dogs to now equal playing field, it's a really tricky thing is the mental health behind what is now this weird dopamine game of being an artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, couple things. First is if so you I love how you talk about making a good TikTok, like shooting a bullseye. What are some things that you try to nail when you're making a TikTok? What contributes to the bullseye TikToks in your
I'm so conflicted
professional
right
opinion?
now. I'm so conflicted because I mean, clearly, I knew early on that I learned that for some reason people need to watch that piece of content all the way through. It either needs to be like so funny or so surprising or so random throughout it, right? Your dopamine keeps sort of getting a new thing, or it needs to be phenomenal. So I've been leaning
Mm.
on phenomenal. And so that's why I'm like bursting and my neck is like exploding because it's like the hardest thing I could sing ever that day. Um, but it's really tricky for me right now where I'm at as I'm rebranding. Because as an artist versus being like an influencer,
Yeah.
it's a tricky spot, right? Like I'm feeling, and that's why you see some of the tour that I did. I'm feeling a little bit um like people in like the music scene. see me as like a joke or whatever. Like
Mm,
I have an email tracker, so I know when people open my emails, and I'll be like, "You fucking opened that email 100 times, and you didn't even hit me back." Like, um,
mm,
and it'll be applying for tours, it'll be management, it could be labels. Hey, pass this off to an A&R, whatever it is. And so I'm feeling a little bit like shunned, and that's okay. Like I'm gonna push through anything, and I'm proud of the music, and I think it'll hit hopefully a broad demographic of people, much like an Ed Sheeran or a Taylor Swift or whatever it is. I think the pop punk kids will like it. I think the musical theater kids will like it, and I think the pop or singer songwriter people will like it. And I'm being told by like people I trust that I come across very differently in person than I
mm.
do online.
Okay.
And maybe it was that I was put into a boy band and I was sort of trained to be like media trained and
Yeah.
energetic. But in my defense, like I actually am not faking who I am on camera. I do turn it on. I'm like, hey, what's up? Like, whereas if I'm talking to someone like a friend on tour or sitting at a couch, like I'm talking very much like I'm talking to you. And so now you're saying like, how do I throw the bullseyes? For me, it's been phenomenal content and energetic and quick to the punch. And I'm hearing that I'm like a modern Fred from people that I know and trust and talk to other people in the industry. Like that guy seems like sort of a tool. And then
Mm,
they're like, no, he's really
yeah.
cool. He's just not at all like his content. Um,
Mm.
so I'm trying to rebrand it. I haven't like been more chill in videos yet, but I swear when I'm energetic, it still works. And singing high or hard like that does take a ton of energy. Um, and I usually like to smile in my videos instead of looking like I hate this song. Like, oh, I'm so
Yeah.
moody. Um, so yeah, that's something I'm struggling with now. As I rebrand, it'll sort of be, um, finding that imagery that fits into guess whatever niche, but I just don't try to fit into a niche. So I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know how to do this shift.
That's such an interesting struggle because people do want to see the highly energetic, highly charismatic stuff. I mean, that is like you're saying, that's what captivates people. That's what keeps scratching that dopamine itch. But then you do that, and then part of the industry is like, well, that's not like realistic. Like that's not, being authentic or whatever. It's like
Or cool.
how is it possible to strike that balance? That's a really interesting challenge.
Yeah, I think it's like yeah, it's hard because I get told like yeah, somebody comes to your Instagram like it needs to look like this all cohesive branding. It needs to instantly sort of be your like visual EPK of like who you are as an artist and as a person. Of course, that's hard to communicate. Um, And I mean, you even heard me sort of speak on the musical and artistic connection I like have with my fans. It's sort of been gas in the tank. Um, and I've been told like, yeah, okay, it sounds like you're coming off cheesy and like violin playing your stuff, but in reality, like that connection with the fans has been everything for me.
Hmm.
And I'm not cooler than that. And like the idea of having to hide backstage before you go out and play. I understand it's exciting when you walk out, but like with the last tour I did, like I was literally letting people into the show as the like fucking door guy. Like, welcome to my event. I rented this place. Like, welcome. Thank you for coming. Like, I'm a real person. I keep getting in trouble on stage because I keep offering people to come stay at my house in Nashville. My wife's like, can you stop like saying that on stage? Um, I haven't let anybody random do that yet.
That's good. That I would probably, yeah, I'd probably with your wife on that one. Uh,
Yeah.
I think you'll figure it out, man. I think you'll figure
Thanks.
it out. I mean, it seems to me, and this has been so cool to talk to you about it, is you have gotten so proficient at so many things in the music world. You're like the most legit artist and musician. So it's really shitty that people, as you're saying, have pegged you a certain way. That
Sure,
that
but
I
I don't want to like live necessarily by this like oh everyone's against me. Like I'm not like that. It just I'll find my team when I find my team. Onward and
yeah, yeah.
upward. I'm gonna keep going. If anybody wants to join me, join me.
I'll join you, David. I'll join you.
Thanks, man. So who
And
did you look up to in like your like what made you an artist and like where you are now?
Yeah, well, great question. I mean, it's a crazy journey. I mean, my all the way up at basically until college, I was all about sports, and I'm still very much into fitness and lifting. But my shift to music really happened in college. Started studying opera. Also at the same time, found electronic music because I was going to school in Miami, and that's just a hub for music production and electronic
Sure.
music and DJing and stuff like that. So I went heavily into music production for a while, switched my major, all the while kind of keeping tabs on the opera world. And then before I went to my master's, really switched back to doing opera full because I was going to my master's to study and be a TA and all this stuff. And then the pandemic hits and I kind of pivoted back to music production. And since then, which is about seven, what, no, 5 years ago? That's crazy. The
Sure.
pandemic's been happening that long. It's very
Oh,
much been straddling the line of keeping this professional opera career going while continuing to grow on YouTube and grow this podcast and grow with the Bass Gang and do all these exciting collaborations and stuff. I mean, as far as who I look up to, it's very different between those fields. Like I have my opera idols, I have all the golden age bass singers that, I'm listening to all the time and trying to mimic their resonance and vowel shaping and all this kind of stuff. And then I have all my, big inspirations for what I do outside of that, which is, um, I mean, you name it. I listen to all kinds of music, but like an Imagine Dragons for if I'm producing like a big, if I'm trying to produce like a big like anthem style pop song, or I listen to a lot of the music out of the League of Legends universe because I love the balance of electronics and orchestra and like big
hmm.
power vocals and creating soundscapes and stuff like that. So it really depends on which part of my artistic career I'm, thinking about. For podcasting, I love I don't know if you know Chris Williamson of the Modern Wisdom podcast.
Mm,
He's just so switched on and smart and is so good at listening and asking questions. So he's kind of like my model for how I'm running the podcast.
that's cool.
So getting a lot of inspiration from a lot of different directions for sure.
That that's awesome. Yeah, I'd love to hear some of your production stuff. That's cool. Yeah, and I had also like, I mean, if you watched any like the old school YouTubers, I know acapella necessarily isn't necessarily like opera, but I don't know if you know Peter Hollins.
I
Um,
do. I do
yeah,
indeed.
he
Yeah.
yeah, I've done countless productions for him and his wife. He was like one of my clients when I was like living in LA and he was in Oregon. He also went to my college and I know that his university was like a big part of him and developing the choirs there. Um, so I've always
That's
had sort
wild.
of this like major respect towards all of the like opera, classical, that whole world. Um,
So fun thing about Peter Hollins, and I can say this because this episode will come out after the Bass Gang is doing a Halloween song with him.
nice,
We're doing
nice.
an acapella version of the Ghostbusters theme. We
Oh, that's
just
cool.
we just got the first mix from Ed Boyer today. I don't know if you know Ed Boyer, but he is
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
the
Yeah, because I
god
was
of
mixing for
acapella.
him. I was mixing for
Okay.
him and for Evan, and I usually had all his wife. I usually had all of his wives, and Ed usually had all of Peter's. But there was quite a few times where Ed wasn't available, and so it would come to me. And then sometimes it was like, "Hey, Ed's doing this. Can you edit Peter's vocal?" And then I would send it to Ed.
Wow.
Yeah,
Small world, man.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. It really
crazy.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Peter, I mean, he's one of the, godfathers of modern acapella, basically. He was
And he's
popping
such a
off.
genius. Like he's such an entrepreneur. Like,
Yeah.
and the way that he runs his business, and I was a part of Patreon right at the beginning. He was like on the board, and he was a big part of it, and sort of seeing what he does with running a lot of different social media pages and ads, um, and then of course also like lifting up and supporting other creators. I think that's incredible.
Have you done musical projects with him before?
I mean, I've worked with him for
Or
years.
I mean, like
I
Peter
A
and
collab with
David.
me and
Yeah,
him?
yeah, yeah.
No.
Musical
We've talked
collab.
about it. I never
Oh,
did. And I wasn't like I was always like a modestly not big dog or whatever. Like I had probably like 150,000 YouTube subscribers around the time I was like doing a lot of Peter's production stuff, but
hmm.
it isn't until like I got like more into like the TikTok growth that everybody's been like, "Oh, hey, we should work." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay." Now.
Yeah,
But no,
yeah.
Peter and I always talked about working. It just never worked out with our scheduling.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, man, I'll send you some of the stuff I'm done if you're interested in listening. I just put out an album. It's all covers. It came out in May, and it
Cool.
is very much in the style of that. I don't know if you listen to League of Legends music or if you've heard or if you've seen Arcane, the show.
Hmm.
But that style is just fascinating to me. Like the big anthem songs with the combination of heavy electronics and heavy drum sampling with full orchestra, like that to me is such a cool combo that I think that universe is really nailing, like
Do
really
you
doing a cool
do,
job.
because you're a producer, do you
Yeah.
do like all of those productions? Do you do mixing? Like what are your skills and strengths in that world?
I do it all. I wouldn't say I'm as good at mixing vocals as an Ed Boyer or
Sure,
probably you if you've edited for him. But yeah, I mean, I produced the whole album start to finish. The only thing I didn't do for the album is I got a mastering engineer to master the whole thing.
sure,
I do know how to master decently, but
sure.
um, I think it's great to have a second opinion for, someone else take it once you're done mixing it and have them
Agreed.
find a really balanced sound. But yeah, as far as that, I mean, I
Sorry.
track my own vocals and I write all the orchestra parts. I don't hire. I wish I had the money to hire a full orchestra. Unfortunately, I just try to find. Usually, if I have a really featured part, like I got Mia Asano to play a leading
Sure,
violin part on a song. So I'll find someone if it's going to be really present, but it's usually a lot of like backing foundation stuff that you can kind of get away with good sampling.
sure.
But yeah, and dude, that's my biggest passion. The only thing I can just sit and do all day is produce music. If I have a mix I'm working on, I'll be at the computer for 12 hours mixing, and I'm happy doing
Yeah.
that.
That's cool. Yeah, mixing is probably my favorite part of the process. I love the production and layering, of course. And then with all of these songs, I have been outsourcing a decent amount. Usually I'll do like guitar, bass, drums, and like maybe like a few like layers of stuff. And then I have a few producers that I've been like at that point, like sending stuff out.
Mm,
Um, and then as far as mastering goes, I do agree with you. I'm like a total mixing nerd. Like I'm confident in it. And whenever I do like hire people, I usually end up like regretting that I hired someone
mm.
and like, oh, I could, and then I end up just like wasting that money and then I do it myself. But um, I I tried. I'm a mastering engineer too, and I tried. Because I'm doing all of the production here in my room on my speakers and all of the mixing and everything. I was like, I know it's got to be biased, even though I've got all the sound stuff. I have to be too bassy or too whatever. Like, and so I reached out to a guy named Ted Jensen, who's literally the number one mastering engineer like in the world at Sterling Sound. And I mean, he actually did Hotel California, but anything from Green Day, American Idiot to the new Taylor Swift's versions to Sabrina Carpenter or whatever
Oh
it is.
my
Like he's like the
God.
number one guy, and he doesn't work with everyone. And he
What's his
turns people
name?
down.
What's his name?
Ted Jensen, Tedjensen. And he like I'm good. Like I don't want to sound cocky, but like I'm a decent mastering engineer. And I even like paid for or like people were doing like they'd master it for free and send a file and for like whatever, $100 I could like unlock their master and like fine. Like I had some people try and I tried and then I sent the first one to Ted Jensen and I was blown away. I have no clue. It's not fair. It's like he can make things just louder than everyone else. Like and fuller and
I don't
like the
understand.
bass would growl in a way that I was like, what's going on here? And so then I like unfortunately got addicted because I was like, oh shit, like okay. So for those first five songs, I have hired Ted Jensen and he is not cheap. And so now like I just finished like two more mixes and I'm like, I know there's like 18 more songs I need to master. Like, am I gonna keep paying for this when I can do it myself? But I just know if I send it to him, like, yeah, so
It's gonna be
that's
the
my current
best.
mental thing. I like watched a bunch of videos on Ozone 11 this morning because I'm like,
That's what
I'm
I
using
use.
Ozone. Well, I'm using like 8 plus like a bunch of other plugins, but I like a lot of the stuff in 8. But then I like looked at Ozone 11. I'm like, okay, like
It's nice.
it's not quite the price of hiring Ted Jensen for one song, but it's still, a little expensive. Or should I just keep going with Ted Jensen because he's just so good? Um,
What is it to hire Ted Jensen for a song?
yeah, I try to get like a more indie rate, but yeah, it's like $400 a song. Um,
For
but
mastering,
he's
that's
but
that's
he's so
great.
good. But at least he doesn't do what the other guy. Like I don't know if it's ever bad to share people's rates online, but like there's a rock mixer. named Tom Lord Alge. Chris Lord Alge is like super famous. Tom Lord Alge is his brother. He's incredible. And I got a rate from him because I was so curious. And not only was it like very expensive, like $4,000 or something or a mix. It was the master percentage. It was like 15% of the master. I was like, what? Like, are you like really?
Wow.
Like, I could like, but the master, like, um, but yeah, that's everybody's trying to get their hands in it. So yeah, I'm now at a point where I've spent so much time off making content. I'm like less relevant or whatever, and making less money. So I'm reworking my business, of course, to fix that. And then also, I've been spending money and working on time on all these, like a ton of songs for a long time now. My wife's like, "Can you like start making some more money?" I'm like, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, um, yeah, it's a tough spot, but outsourcing or building a team is very hard, and I have not done a great job of it yet.
Okay, couple questions. We're already at an hour, but I have to keep asking you stuff because this
Sure,
is we're
sure,
we're
sure.
rocking and rolling right now. Um, okay, because you mix and master at a proficient professional level.
Sure.
In your mind, if you can give like a short overview of what in your opinion are the differences first between a good mix and a great mix and a good master and a great master.
Um, it depends on the genre a little bit. um clearly, at least for me, the vocal emotionality really needs to cut through, but the drums are everything in a mix, and I think that that's going
Hmm.
to give you your genre, but that's going to give you
Yeah.
who's going to like it. Like, like, even if you go listen to that new Disney pop punk thing, right? Like those are like super sampled. But I'm an audio engineer nerd, so I'm pushing my like, I really want the non-sampled. um you got to have the drums be so hyper realistic and so much larger than life. This sort of goes back to that like recording classical vocals in like a
Hmm.
studio environment versus like where you would see it. It's just the snare that just is a cannon of a snare, not just a snare in a room. Um, and so it needs to be hyper realistic. However, all of those great records of the past that held the test of time have an organic imperfection that has made them that great. Um, I My ear is ruined. I can't listen, unfortunately, to anything like at all, like out of pitch, like out of tune, like auto
Uh-huh.
tune. Like I even see like live performers, and like I saw a show recently, and like all the bands, like the singer had subtle auto tune, and then one band didn't, and I like couldn't listen to the band live. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, everything needs to be like, unfortunately, super in time, like super in time, super emotional. And that mix needs to constantly be um, something that you're immersed in, that like envelops you, but also every single thing is audible and loud and punchy, especially the drums. And then for mastering, there was a big thing for a while called the loudness war, where it was like,
Yeah.
everybody's trying to master it too loud or whatever. And then people would be like, oh, like if you let the dynamics be there, like it really breathes. And the loudness war is over. Louder is just better now. Uh, and I think that comes down to sort of human, um, sort of how we
Yeah.
perceive sound. Um,
Psychoacoustics, right? Yeah.
yeah, and it's actually difficult, and this comes back to the mix. It's difficult to get a mix that is fitting together so magically that when you go to master it, it does get loud without all of a sudden something poked out in a way that it shouldn't, and it ruins the master. Um, which is something Ted Jensen magically can just rework. Um, and it looks like Ozone 11 has like some weird tricks in it too with AI. Um,
I've enjoyed it. Sometimes it really nails it, sometimes it really misses the mark. But the thing about it is, let's say in Ozone 11, if you select, what's cool is they have presets for like famous mastering engineers, like
yeah.
how they might master. So they have that, which is cool. And then they have like, okay, you can select the pop. AI master where it listens to the a loud section of your track and it sets all these parameters. What's cool is that when it sets those parameters, it adds all those plugins in. So you can go in and then adjust, it might throw a rack of 7 things in Ozone. You can go in and adjust everything, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it gives you your signal chain. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that's sort of probably the best way to work too. Yeah, it throws you an idea and then you mute everything and bypass everything and then sort of start from
Right.
there. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
that's cool. Yeah, if you ever need mix notes, um I'm like so detailed and I offer it to people and I do it. And it and it's good because I feel like when you get mix notes as a someone who mixes for people, I hate the like it just doesn't feel like it's what yellow enough. Like that's what it feels like they're saying. Like and you're like, can you just be specific? I want to know that the tambourine hit at 14 seconds in is too loud. That's what I want to know. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like
yeah.
so detailed on my mix notes. And it's tough because I like sometimes I try to not sound like an asshole at all. Like I'm like, oh, please don't be mean. But I'm just like 37 seconds. Okay, this. Oh, the 39 seconds. This. But I'd happily give mixed notes and then yeah, I have a few songs I'm testing mastering, so I'd happily throw you
Awesome.
a mix and a master and say, what do you think of this mix and master? And you could try to beat me, feel free. And then like, that's the whole thing is like Ted Jensen just like straight up beat me. Like I was like, I can't,
I
I
can't
can't
do it.
compete. Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Well, yeah, I'll definitely be in touch. I do have some songs coming out over the next few months that
Cool.
some of them are pretty, some of them are like big, like just big, like the League of Legends stuff, just big
Yeah.
songs. And it's tough to get all that shit balanced properly.
Yeah.
It's tough,
Yeah.
man.
Cause you keep going and then you're like, I totally like, where are the drums?
Yeah.
I can't even like, yeah, those
It's just
are
a wall of
so,
sound. Yeah.
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 Keeping it super full, but also detailed is really, really hard.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's really hard.
it really is. And I've definitely gotten better over the years. And I go listen to old mixes and I like open sessions, even from like a year ago. I'll open a session and be like, what was like, why would I choose that plugin?
Yeah.
That's strange.
You know what's
Um,
and it's not to take everything out of their book, but the best dubstep producers have an incredible way of making everything ridiculously loud but ridiculously clear.
who's
Like,
a great dubstep producer?
oh my God, I would love to send you some if that's not
Sure.
something you've ever really listened to. It's like, and they use like a lot of like heavy side chaining, but
Hmm.
not in the pumping way you might hear in like house music, but where it's just all kick, but then before you even notice, all the rest of the sounds are back. So it's just always loud, but everything is just like, and they're so creative with sound. I will send you some stuff because I think it's one of those like cringe genres where it's like you hear dubstep and you're like, oh God, like 2012 fucking what, Scary Monsters and what, but those producers are amazing, man. They're amazing.
That's cool. What style are you doing for the bass gang?
Bass Gang. We still do some. We do like half acapella, like totally acapella, like the thing with
Sure.
Peter Hollins, fully acapella. But for May the Bass Be With You, Volume 4, where we're doing like Viking and more fantasy stuff, like we're doing. I think this episode will come out after that. So we're doing Valhalla Calling, we're doing My Mother Told Me, we're doing Reigns of Castamere, and we're doing Dragonborn. And for all, I don't think any of them are acapella. So like for My Mother Told Me, which is my song for the album, we're featuring Eric Holloway, freakish giant bass vocalist. But I'm doing it with a lot of electronic elements and like some dark growly synths and big heavy drum sampling with also the vocals in there. For Dragonborn, we have like an 11-piece real orchestra that's playing that we hired on Fiverr that's phenomenal. For Valhalla Calling, I think we're featuring a metal band. For
Cool.
Reigns of Castamere, we've got Ali the Piper and another violinist.
Allie's a
Uh,
good friend.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. And so we do fully a cappella stuff still for some projects, but we also are really leaning away from that too because I think it makes for really cool music to have heavy vocal layering with like some bass lead vocals, but also a
Yeah.
lot of instruments thrown in there. And I think it can capture a wider audience too, as opposed to just strictly a cappella. So
Yeah,
that's what we're
and
up
you
to right now.
might be able to use the same production and just mute the band. You
Yeah.
keep that in mind, you know?
What did we do that? We did a collaboration with the Wellerman, the other group Bobby's in,
Hmm.
called Santiana, and they released as like a two song single where it was we had Allie the Piper on that as well, whereas like all the vocals and like drum samples and Allie, and then one a cappella version, and they both perform well. Like the one with instruments performs better, but like it is worth releasing both versions.
Totally. Yeah, no, I completely see that. Yeah, it very well might be. That's cool.
Maybe we do
Okay,
that.
you could edit this out maybe. I don't know if you
Okay.
ever want to edit. I'm curious though because I
Yeah.
saw some of the drama around Valhalla Calling. Um, I don't have to ask a question that's edgy. Again, my wife would be like, "Can you not ask dumb shit on a podcast?" But what, the Peyton and the other guy,
Yeah.
can I thoughts from somebody probably on the inside? I know Peyton and I've known him for a while, and he featured me on his album without knowing the context of necessarily everything. Um, I really like Peyton. I think he's like one of the sweetest, nicest guys like I've ever met.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is so interesting, and we can cut this out later if
Sure.
needed. So I've come from the other side where I know Gav. I did a podcast episode with Gav.
Mm.
And I know a lot of people who've worked with both of them, like Colin McGinnis, Jonathan Young, Serena Bell a little bit has worked with Peyton. Um, a lot of them seem to really be in Gav's corner and feel like Gavin is uh the authentic one, the one who's really looking out for artist integrity, and that Peyton's been like a big dick about a lot of things. So I actually don't know anyone yet until you that knows and has really like worked intimately with Peyton on projects and has a good rapport with him. So please, I
Yeah,
would I would love to hear from
my
your side.
yeah. So he like found me online, and his dad's his manager, and his dad is really, really smart. He's tough. I can imagine that people would sometimes probably see that, but he like doesn't take any shit from anyone. But he's really smart, and he like watches a lot of stuff. He like knew all kinds of stuff about my like backstory and content, and they flew me out to Detroit, and they were shooting like 10 music videos, and it was really high production. And he put me on his album, and gave me a good cut of that song. And we shot this like very high production thing. And then he had another song that was someone else. He asked me to play guitar in the music video. I was happy to. And him and his girlfriend are like, they come to town. They like love my wife and my kids, and we like see them. And I think they're so sweet. And I do think that uh, like I have to be careful about what I say, but I do
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that sometimes people don't know all of like Peyton's who he is or his health or his like brain.
Hmm.
And I do think that can be sometimes misconstrued.
Mm,
And I think that um I think in his core he is sweet. And I think that you probably do have a manager that is like protecting his son that does sometimes need some protection. And so that's where you would get some heavy like strong armness.
mm.
But as far as like songwriting and covers, I mean, that sort of goes down to I've been making Katy Perry or Demi Lovato money for years, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I understand when it's an independent artist, then, that's, I guess, somewhat tough, but the publishing is the publishing,
yeah.
and the live performance is the publishing. So you can claim, I'm sure he is, that he's playing a huge festival in Germany, and that money is going to go through BMI Live or whatever. And if set up properly, I don't remember the other guy's name, but he would be making,
Or Miracle Sound or Gavin.
yeah, exactly. Miracle Sound would be making money on all of that. As far as like the crediting stuff goes, like that's like something that sort of even comes down to like the content doing well or not. Um, I I sometimes don't necessarily want to credit someone that I'm collaborating with on like even if they're just like a part of like the team that they're not showing their face on like everything because I know it's gonna maybe mess with the algorithm of people then clicking over and it mess with the play and then they don't care about that
Mm,
person and then they click and click off like
mm.
um and that's just something that I think that's tough. I don't remember what the other things were. Clearly, they shouldn't be showing their dirty laundry to people.
Yeah, we were joking that it was like a ploy. Just,
Sure,
I'm sure it wasn't, but we were
sure.
joking. We're like, I wonder if Gavin and Peyton are just ripping on each other to bring a bunch of attention.
And then they
They're
do a
not.
collab. They
Yeah,
should.
exactly.
They
I was
should.
like, when's the collab coming?
I mean,
Have you talked to Peyton about this
no,
situation? You not brought it
no,
up. Okay. Okay.
no. I mean, I will. I'm like usually pretty like neutral or understanding about this kind of stuff. And like I said, my wife's a professional like YouTuber talking about like religion and politics and like women's rights, and
Wow.
she
Yeah.
can speak on things that are so like polarizing, and she can look at both sides of it and do it in such a respectful way. I'm not as good at like riding the line. Like we had a podcast and we would like shoot the podcast. She'd be like, "You shouldn't have said that." I was like, "All right, sorry. I haven't been canceled. I'm not going to be canceled, but I do make some jokes that are on the line." But yeah, I mean, it's good that they made up or whatever, and
It
I
seems.
really I think Peyton's really sweet. And you know whatever happened, I'm sure like they would meet up and hug and like talk it out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm confident in that.
Well, this is cool. I'm glad to have someone on here to speak from the other camp because I don't know Peyton at all. I only know Gavin. Peyton actually used a clip from my podcast with Gavin when like this whole thing was coming out.
That's great. That's
I was like, oh boy.
I don't know if he's watching. Hi,
Um,
Peyton. But also, and then speaking on voice, his voice was the introduction for me to see and feel subharmonics. I've never heard anyone do it, and then he was like showing me his voice, and I was like, "What?" Like the room just rumbled. I was like, "How do you?" He's like, "Yeah, I can't like do it all day. It tires me out."
yeah,
Um,
he does have an amazing voice. Is he talking about false fold subharmonics?
I
Because that has
guess,
a
yeah,
because that
that's
has a those have a lot of beef to them. It's different than like the subharmonics where it's just true fold and it's
sure.
not a very loud sound. The like
Yeah,
stuff like that is like
it's big. Like
you can get
he
some
goes and
power.
then he turns it on, and the whole room like shakes, and you're like, "Whoa."
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Cool. All right. Last thing before we go, I would love to hear like one crazy story from tour.
I'll do it as quick as possible. So the first tour of this tour that I talked about, where I was renting these rooms, I called it the private party tour. The first tour of it was a great prototype for the most part. I played Las Vegas, and it was a Friday, and I sold like 150 tickets. It was sweet. It was a rooftop, like I could see the strip, like it was awesome. And I'll do this as quickly as I can. We parked the car at the venue. They said there's a lot there that we could park there for the weekend. We were in like the arts district in North Vegas, and we slept in all the next day because we were up late partying. And then the next day we went to a music festival when we were Young Fest. And then the next day we were going to wake up and we were going to drive because we had to play Salt Lake City the day after. And so woke up and we all had a hotel room, and I like looked at Find My Friends, and I had a air tag in the trailer of the RV. And all of a sudden, I realized that that air tag was not on like the arts district of Vegas. It was like 5 miles south. Uh, so I leave the hotel freaking out. We had a rental car, and were driving towards the air tag. I call the like towing companies. Hey, did you tow a 31-foot RV with a 12-foot trailer? And they're like, no. So we show up at the AirTag location, and it's a big parking lot next to another casino that I don't know. And we pull in, and I see the RV and trailer. It's there. Like what? Okay, we all have keys, so like I have a set of keys, and so we drive up to it. It's there. I'm like, can we go in? Like, what? Did we get drunk and drive the RV and trailer here? I don't think so. I didn't. And the camping mat, I had like a mat that I never used. It's like wipe your paws off. Like maybe if my wife and I were camping, we'd like put it out and be like, oh, cute mat. Was out in front of the door, and then the shower curtain was up over the window, like blocking the window. And the towels that we had were up over the driver area, blocking those windows. I was like, oh, uh-oh, uh-oh, we have a problem. So I call over security at this parking lot. Security comes over. He's got a gun. I'm like, all right, you're good. Let's go in. He's like, I'm not fucking going in. I was like, you got a gun. We're going in. We need to figure out what the hell's going on. He's like, I'm calling police. I was like, all right, fine. So I have to wait for the police. So wait for the police. Police shows up. they do like a pop, pop, pop. Vegas police, open up. We know you're in there. And they go in and no one's in there. But it's destroyed. All of our stuff in weird piles, things that should were in the back room were now in like the middle area, and like everything was like destroyed. Like the curtains were like torn, and like there's just like fucking soda or something like sticky, gross everywhere. It smells like cigarettes. Um, there was like we found a bunch of drugs. We found like heroin and like a lot of crack pipes and weird underwear like with like blood or like poop on
Oh
them like
my,
just
what the?
and and the stuff that was stolen, this is like this wasn't the trailer, thank God. This was the our belongings. So you're gonna get like Apple Watch. I lost a guitar, two guitars, sorry, two guitars, a camera with a nice lens on it. I had a drone. I had a bunch of cool pairs of shoes. I had a boosted board, one of those like expensive, cool, fast, like 20-mile-an-hour skateboards. I
How did they even
I
steal all that?
myself lost like $9,000 worth of stuff. And then I had two shows and I had to refund that $10,000 of tickets, which I was already spending all that money for everyone's salaries and one. It's not like they didn't not still get a salary, right? Um, and then I had to cancel those two shows. One of the two venues didn't give me my money back because it's a rental. I was canceling the day before. And then I did an Indiegogo, which did raise like $17,000. That helped. I lost a lot more money. Insurance. I have insurance. Guess what? Business versus personal. I answered like I speak to my accountant. We're like, business or personal? I'm like, business. Yeah. Like, okay, all these things. And they're like, oh, just kidding. Oh, you're on a recorded line. And yeah, we don't cover business. And I was like, whoa, whoa, I got that guitar for Hanukkah when I was 14 years old. Have I made money with it? Sure. Did I like take all my guitar lessons and like play a bunch of shows with it growing up? Yeah. And so they fought me on everything. They even went to my Instagram and they're like, we saw you flew your drone. Seems like business. I was like, oh my God, I bought that for like a family vacation. Like,
Assholes.
so yeah, I got super fucked, and so my prototype of the tour got a little screwed. I learned a lot. And yeah, I was like the first person to have their like RV and trailer like stolen, and luckily I had an air tag and I recovered it. And luckily they didn't get into the trailer. They lost the trailer keys, which were in the vehicle, which was dumb of us. So we had to cut the lock off. But
How did they steal the RV?
oh, and they like ruined the car. And they went tried to get the catalytic converter, and they didn't, but they like ruined the car.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
How did they get it?
Uh, uh, there is someone I can blame. I don't want to blast them
Okay.
for it, but there
Okay.
was someone that was supposed to sleep in there and leave in the morning and leave the key in there, and uh and they did not do that. They hid the key and the key went missing. The crackheads probably saw that person hide the key and got in there. So there was one person that could be to blame. Um,
Really unlucky either way, though. Really
really
unfortunate.
unlucky. And I didn't tell the police that, but yeah,
Gosh. Those crackheads, man.
yeah.
Those
Anyways, yeah,
crackheads.
that's a pretty good tour story.
That's a fantastic tour story. Okay. Please, anything else you'd like to say to whoever's watching before we sign off?
Well, thank you for having me. It's cool to nerd out about the vocal part of like being an artist and loving singing and getting better and developing, and also sharing in some of the like the business stuff, which I'm passionate about, of course. If anything, I'd say, if you guys want to check out my stuff, feel free. I am launching a website by the time this comes out, officialdmf.com. I'm coming out with new merch, including this vocal rest shirt.
Yes, I
I
love
literally
that.
made that vocal rest shirt just so I don't have to like have an excuse when I like go to a
So,
restaurant on tour and I'm like, and I got tape over my face. Um, so that's like a relevant shirt for any vocalist. But yeah, check out my music and I'll yeah, hopefully see you on tour sometime.
that'd be
Yeah,
fantastic, man. Come through the Southwest.
I will. I had Bobby and Danny play Boston on my first tour. That was
I
also their first show.
I love that. We're by the way, we're coming back to Nashville November 10th through 15th. I don't know if they've talked to you about
They
that.
did. Yeah, they told me,
Fantastic. Okay,
and Danny's
cool.
shooting a music video, and his song's awesome. And I told him
Boots.
he needs to party hard, like get one of those, like be a tourist and get one of those tractors that's open and going through
Yes.
Broadway, and people are drinking. Like shoot on that. He loved the
Oh,
idea, so I'll probably be hanging and partying with you guys.
yes, fantastic. All right, David, I appreciate you. Glad we got to chat, and I will keep you posted with the release of this.
Sweet. All right, thank you.
All right,
Nice
man.
to meet you.
Take
Talk to you
care.
later. See ya.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for checking out my conversation with David Michael Frank. If you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you'll enjoy this other one with our dear friend, the Bobby Bass. Go on, click it.